afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone is enjoying day 2 of the summit so far. My name is Fruzan from FinTech Growth Syndicate. Not sure if everyone was here yesterday to see the announcement of PayTechs of Canada. It is great to see Canada embracing to improve payment experience for Canadians by creating more competitive competition and innovation. Another important factor for driving innovation is talent, diverse talent, especially the involvement of women in Canadian businesses, in payments, and in FinTech. Today, I am the moderator of this amazing panel of women that are innovating the way in FinTech. So now, without further ado, allow me to introduce you the distinguished panelists of today. We have Michele Beyo, the Chief Client Officer of Shyft Network, Kristy Duncan, the founder and CEO of Women in Payments, and Sue Whitney, the Senior Advisor, Modernization Payments Canada. So now we'll pass on the mics to you guys. Could you please briefly tell the audience and share with us your experience and background? Yeah, you have mic.
This is her first time doing it, so I think we should all give her a round of applause because I think she's doing a great job. Thank you. So my name is Michele Beyo. I'm the Chief Client Officer at Shyft. My background is all payments. I have some old Incom colleagues in the audience today. And Incom, if you don't know, they're the largest prepaid organization in the world, running prepaid cards out of their Walmart locations. Anytime that you're touching a gift card, it facilitates that interactive payment. And it was my first intro into payments, and already being in that space and being enamored with how much it touched and how it affected the market and people utilizing gift cards and not truly understanding its background, and then moving into blockchain into the more complex way of trying to understand what FinTech is. And in my role today, Shyft is an organization that has created a new protocol for blockchain based off Ethereum with 15 different advantages to allow for every transaction to be based on consent so that it could be GDPR compliant, allow for interoperability between blockchains because that's the only way for scale, as well as help with new solutions to facilitate EID and many other solutions for unbanked and underbanked.
I'm Kristy Duncan. Can everybody hear me? I'm the only one with a lavalier here. Founder and CEO of Women in Payments, a born payments geek. I don't like to lose that title. But now I run Women in Payments. We're a global organization. We offer career development programs as well as symposia for women in the global payments ecosystem, really focused on Canada, the US, Australia, UK, Singapore, but just trying to build out the talent and the careers of women across this industry.
Is it on? It's on. My name is Sue Whitney, and I am a certified payment geek. I've been a regulator. I worked at a bunch of different networks, launched a few pretty cool products for Interac and Visa over the years, including Visa Debit. And I am now at Payments Canada helping drive modernization and survive.
That's great, thank you. So the objective for today's panel is to have a conversation about the involvement of women in the space. So I would like to start off with asking a question of what do you think FinTech is and how can we get more women interested in FinTech and involved in the space?
FinTech is essentially anything that is facilitating technology and payments. And I think it stems to many different realms at this point, and many people don't even realize a prepaid card is FinTech. Digital wallets, apps are FinTech, and everything that is changing the globe and the discussion that's happening is FinTech. And I think the reason why this panel has to happen is women are in many different industries, but in the FinTech space, there's a massive gap. And in some of the write-up of this panel, it speaks to the fact that, when you're looking at these two industries, financial payments and technology, women have not predominantly been there. But in FinTech, as it's growing so quickly, if we could find our foot and help educate and bring more women into the space now, we could get to gender diversity, I believe, in FinTech. We may not be able to fix payments overall or fix technology just for the trajectory and how big it is, but I really do feel that there's an opportunity for us to lift up, help women move from different industries. I came from loyalty before I ended up in payments, and there's so much transferable skills that we just have to help them have the confidence to apply to the job because they do have the skills. It's just the mindset shift.
So, women in FinTech. FinTech, so first of all, to define FinTech, I define it a little more broadly perhaps. And Michele, I look at it as technology and financial services, not just payments. So, I mean, that can go kind of, everybody has a little different place where they draw the line, but it can go to perhaps some of the reg tech, but certainly insure tech, some of the other investment tech, some of the robo-advising. In my mind, that's all kind of financial services related, and we can go beyond just pay tech as a definition for FinTech. Why it's important to have women here, for me, it's about it's about business performance. We just had a report come out from KPMG in the UK a couple of weeks ago that looked at the ROI for women-led FinTechs versus others and found that it was more than double in the first year of operation. And so I think it was like 113%. I got the number here somewhere. And it's really awesome when you look at women and how they run their businesses and perform. So it's a matter of financial performance, but it's also a matter of employee engagement. It's been proven that the more women you get at senior levels, the higher the employee engagement for the company. But on a third leg, it's also about engaging with your customers. And I would challenge any organization that's represented in this room to say that they've got, whatever it is, 90% male customers, which is what the representation is often of their senior leadership. So I think we need to reflect the demographic composition of our customer base in our leadership teams. And that will help us to understand the customer journey and therefore service our customers better. And if you want, I could get my little soapbox story.
Of course, I want that, please. Please share.
So I apologize for those of you who've heard this before. So it's the milk story. Man decides he needs to go buy milk. He goes to the store. He goes to the back of the store, pulls the milk out of the cooler, goes to the front, pays for the milk, goes home. In 75% of consumer payments in the UK, 80% in the US, 85% of consumer payments in Australia are made by women. So in, let's say, 80% of consumer payment experiences, it's the mom, I'm generalizing, the mom who at often 6 o'clock says, oh, we don't have milk. And the kids are hungry, I'm trying to get dinner on the table, so we better go to the store and get milk. And of course, you don't just go and buy milk. You've got the whole rest of the grocery list that's on the fridge, or half, because it's only halfway through the week. So you go and you buy the rest of the milk. But you get to the store, you've got the kids in the car, you've got one that you dump in the cart and one by the hand, the other one's running on the road, you lost them, who knows, they'll find them somewhere. And you go down and they're pulling the Fruit Loops off the aisle, and you got the onions, and they're ripping apart the National Enquirer, and you finally get the milk, and they're digging into the ice cream, and you finally, you got to wait in line for 10 minutes to pay, and you finally, get them all in the car and get home. And so those customer experiences are very different. And I remember a guy at Money 2020 in Copenhagen 2016. He goes, well, I don't see what the difference is. You just write me the use case and I'll go and give it to my developers and they'll create the product. And I thought, no, that's not the right answer. It took me a long time to articulate that. And for me, it's the milk story that kind of explains the whole customer experience thing. And that's why we need more women on our customer experience teams, as well as our leadership teams, as well as just the product teams to develop these products that are for, in consumer payment side, predominantly women.
So when I think, well, first of all, for me, there isn't probably anybody in this room who has anything to do with payments that doesn't consider how often every day they are touching or relating to technology. So to me, FinTech is just financial services. And so everything's FinTech in my definition. And I was really interested in participating in this panel because I come at it from a little bit of a different angle. I have been incredibly fortunate in my life to have just some of the greatest women bosses. And they have inspired me and given me opportunity and let me kind of do my thing. And so I feel very fortunate. But I have to reflect on, if I reflect on the decades of work, in the 90s, there wasn't a ton of technology in a lot of what we did. It was a lot more around business orientation. And so tech was less prominent. But as we've evolved over the decades since, tech has become far more central because tech is such an enabler. We can do so much more than we could do 20 years ago. So of course it's a bigger part. And what I have found is that those inspirational women bosses are fewer as we go along, as the tech gets deeper, as the diversity and the complexity of the subject matter of what FinTech is becomes heavier on the tech and less on maybe the business strategy or the stakeholder relationships or some of the other soft skills that women might naturally have gravitated to in the 90s. And so for me, I feel like there's a pendulum that's swinging as the mix of skills that you need to be in FinTech is changing. And I'm not sure workplaces have caught up to that and are reflecting on what that means. To Kristy's point, we are different. We're wired differently, and we're also customers. And so to be really successful, you gotta reflect that outside world. And so I do think there's more work to do, even though I also am eternally grateful to the amazing senior women that I've gotten to work with over the years.
Thank you for sharing that. On the note of having female bosses, so according to FinTech Growth Syndicate's research, only 9% of female founders and C-level executives in FinTech in Canada are women. So how can we get more female bosses in this space, and how can we train the younger generation of women to become those future bosses?
So turn back on my mic. So I really feel like I've had to speak about bosses. I've had that opportunity. I've had some phenomenal female bosses. I've had some phenomenal male bosses. My last boss I'll mention, Felipe Papaleo, who works at Incom, was the first time that I worked at an organization where I was at a 50-50 executive level. His team was 50-50, and through that team, in 3 years, we drove so much growth for Incom Canada. It really gave diversity to the conversation. My team was actually all female. I only had one male on it. Our team was actually 60% female. From a working level, and then we were 50-50 at the executive team. And I feel that just gave such a different platform for growth and watching people come up within this space. I had one of my employees leave and give me a month's notice, and she was phenomenal. I had a month to find this person, and I reached down to my team and I said, I want you to apply to this job. And she said, no, I can't. I just got divorced. I have a kid. I can't travel. I don't have the skills. I'm not going to apply. And I said, look, I'm going to keep looking for this role externally, but I want you to apply. And I think I asked her 5 times before she applied, and then I gave her the job. And she's still in the role. She's a director, and she's phenomenal. Laura Brillinger, if you ever want to work with Incom. But it takes opportunity for you to grasp and someone to reach down and tell you can do it. And like same goes for myself. When I moved to Shyft, I know my CEO, Bruce, for years. He's offered me jobs, but his team, I would be the token female on the executive team. And after being on a team of 50-50, there was no way that I was going to do that. I knew what the different challenges would be. And I just made that mandate. I will never take a job that is not 50-50. And he offered it to me, but this time he said, look, Shyft is 50-50. I heard you. We are head of sales, our head of marketing, you're head of clients, and we're going to do this. And I think it takes the male leadership and everyone to grasp the stats that make sense, right? If it's going to drive, I think Kristy said something from a revenue perspective, I've heard 13% or 11% higher if your team is 50-50, that's a huge drive. And if you're looking for revenue in a market where everything has to be free, almost, if you're not looking for angles to find added revenue by diversifying your team, which seems to be an easy thing to do, you just have to mentor. Look at like Sheyo. I love that organization. I donate, I think it was, I don't want to say the wrong number, $1,400, and that goes to me having a vote on 10 different companies that are all female-run organizations, and then they divide it into 3 and give it to 3 winning organizations. That gives a platform for anyone in this room or anyone in the industry to create their own company, become their own CEO, and then apply to Sheyo and see if they can get funding. Because I think that the next problem is I'm at the C level. That's great. That's a glass ceiling that I've now got into, but all the owners and all of the board is all men. So that's one layer, but how do we affect the top 2? Because that's what's going to affect the organizations on a global level.
How do we get more women? That's the question. I mean,
bosses.
well, I mean, one side is really easy. You want more women, you hire more women. I mean, it's easy, but clearly I'm oversimplifying. I think we need our male champions for change, and there are lots of them in this room, and we welcome you and are delighted to have your support, so thank you for that. I'm going to do another little story because stories are good. So I was chatting with this guy who's who started one of the challenger banks in Canada, and there's, they're few and far between. But they're cool and exciting, and they're, fun place to live, to work, and they are directly talking to people who are interested in new innovative banking solutions. And this guy, his bank is called, I wrote it down somewhere. His bank is called North One. He's currently based out of Montreal, hoping to move to Toronto. And he told me, he said, Kristy, I want 50-50. He said, women are awesome. Men are great too. If we get both of them, we got a fabulous team. He said, I've had an executive search firm. I'm trying to fill senior roles. They go away. I say I want, half women on the slate. They come back with a slate of all men. I said, you're fired. I said, I wanted half women. Go away, you're not doing your job. And so he calls in the next search firm and he gets what he wants. But it's about being deliberate, and it's about diversity in all strands. It's gender diversity, but we also, you look at around the room, we've got all kinds of ethnic diversity, we've got all kinds of age diversity, we've got, diversity of experience, and I am honored and delighted to be on this panel with not just, well-seasoned, but it's you and me together. But millennials and younger people coming up the ranks who have different experience and different perspectives on what should the products look like, what should the environment look like, what should our cool new challenger banks look like. And I think having all of those, that diversity just in general is really important. So it's diversity and inclusion, and we need to use all of our resources to get diversity in all strands. There's other things when you're looking at gender in particular that we can do. We can be doing more mentoring, more sponsorship. And Michelle's had some, great experiences with men who have sponsored you through your career and helped you to build it. And those are important. And a difference between a sponsor and a mentor being that the sponsor is the one who will actually advocate for you, often when you're not in the room, but at your organization to help you build your career. The mentor is one who's more like a sounding board who will perhaps, help you think of things that you want. They're like a sounding board for you when you're in your career or otherwise to try and think situations through. And then there's the concept of the coach who will ask questions to help you through certain situations and to help you position for new career opportunities. So women, I think, don't seek or take opportunities to get sponsors, coaches, and mentors as often or as perhaps deliberately as men do. And this is something that we need to learn to do. It's something I have Women in Payments as a global mentorship program that, there are, Paul's been a mentor in this program, and I'm delighted to have that. And hopefully, women will take and make and seek some of these opportunities which will help them to move forward in their careers. I sadly never really had a mentor, so having that opportunity I think could have changed my career significantly. If I had known back when I was at one of the big green banks in Canada, if I had known the things that I know then, the things that I know now, my career would have looked completely different. And I think, you know, I would have been earning a whole lot more, but I perhaps would have been able to push through some of those glass ceilings that Michelle's talking about.
I'm going to tell a story before I need to go for my nap.
Coffee.
So I can recall about 10 years ago, we had a new boss come into a company that I was working at, and this gentleman was a very old school guy. And he used to make the rounds in the office and meet everybody and shake their hand and say a few cute things and move on. And we all thought, this is great, super collegial, open guy. What became really apparent to me after about 2 weeks is that the genuine conversations weren't happening. First of all, with the women, and second of all, they were happening in the men's bathroom. And we knew that there was this whole buildup of collegiality amongst the guys that was occurring. And after about 2 months of this, there were a few of us who got a little bit impatient, because we all knew that the first 3 months with the new president matters a lot. And so a few of us kind of took it upon ourselves to convey that the tone needed to change, and that there was not the same, you know, those early heady days when he'd make the rounds around the office, set a really nice tone, but that it wasn't being perpetuated by his actions. And so we went to the CEO, we went to this guy, and we said, can you recognize this? And to be honest, the dial moved maybe a little bit, not a lot. But it did move, and there became more conscious and proactive efforts to think about the way the tone of the organization was being set, so that women felt comfortable and included, and that they could have a hallway conversation with someone senior, and it would be well received. Because by then, of course, it was the whole backslapping guy thing that was happening. And so we had to work consciously, and fortunately, we had a very receptive audience with this president, and so he did take some steps. But it takes you to, it has to start from the top. And I love this notion of having almost a quota around the relationship of males to females in senior ranks. What I worry a lot about, and what I have seen over my career, has been that the females tend to be allocated into certain of the C roles and not others. And I hope that will change. To be honest, again, we need to be proactive and conscious about those things, and we need to have leaders who set that tone well. And there's a lot of lip service, because diversity and inclusion is the right thing to do, and we all talk about it, and you hear about boards of directors doing a better, more proactive job at recruiting women board members, and so on. So sure, good things happen, but the reality of it is this is cultural, and you need to find someone that is not just HR, who is driving this passionately. Oh, that's probably my daughter, just so everybody knows.
Work-life balance.
Yeah.
We juggle.
Yeah, but I really want to pick up on one of the things Kristy said, because I was invited about a month ago to an event with Sue Britton from FinTech Growth Syndicate, and it was a fantastic group of a lot of interns and young women, mostly women, who had been identified for their eagerness and excitement to participate in technology and in payments and in financial services more broadly. And how often do you guys go to a breakfast meeting when everybody else in the room is under 20? It was an amazing experience. And to see these 15 and 16-year-olds asking questions of this breakfast meeting panel was quite inspiring for me, because first of all, the level of sophistication, but also just the bravery Because when I was 15, I wasn't going to ask questions in a breakfast meeting context of a bunch of panelists. Yeah, that'd be my daughter. And so I was just so inspired. And so to me, again, it's a cultural thing. And we need to create safe places for people at a young age to feel like they can expand their wings and they can challenge and ask. And they can be exposed to technology and exposed to older people to be able to try and learn and experience. And, you know, you getting to moderate today is part of this.
I was going to add on to that. Thank you so much for mentioning that. So I'm a pure example of that. I mean, this is the beginning stages of my career, and I'm at a company where we do have the 50-50 quota. We have amazing men who are so supportive of the women. I had a lot of my colleagues who are male who have helped me prepare for this panel, and also have some people in the audience who have prepped me for this and coached me through it. So it is an incredible experience to be actually around people who genuinely want you to do well. And I never even thought that there is an issue of being a woman in a workplace. In the academic world, you're not taught that. Yeah, you read articles, but you're not taught like, oh yeah, you're a woman, things are different for you out there. And you're young, things are going to be different. So when you are in this world and you get to hear these stories, you're like, oh, things are different. So, and thankfully we have amazing leaders here in this room today who are changing the way things are in Canada and the world.
Can I just add something going back to what Sue talked about with targets and quotas? And because I've had an opportunity to go to different markets. In the UK, HM Treasury, I was embarrassed I had to ask what HM Treasury was. I'm just a dumb Canadian. Well, Her Majesty's Treasury, of course. Silly me. HM Treasury sponsored a report which came out with 3 recommendations, and the report was called Harnessing the Talents of Women in Financial Services. So it was very focused on gender diversity in this industry. And you know, I give UK, their regulators are so forward-thinking and they really push the envelope. But this report, they did a 6-month study. They went out to across financial services, from the big banks to the payment networks to the processor, etc. And they came out with this report, and it had 3 main recommendations. First was that financial services organizations, broadly defined financial services organizations, should develop and publish a gender diversity strategy with targets and update their progress against these targets on an annual basis. Number 2 was that they appoint a senior executive not from an admin function, but from a line of business to demonstrate that there is commitment here, that it's not just something we give to the HR person or the marketing person, to be responsible for developing and ensuring the success of the strategy. And thirdly, that the compensation of senior executives be tied in some way to the success of the strategy. So I thought that really had teeth. The interesting thing was they did not mandate this, but they invited people, organizations to do it. And within the first year, I think 150 or 200 financial organizations had done it. And after the first 6 months, when certain organizations hadn't declared, it was, oh, Lloyd's Bank, do you think you might participate? So they were able to publicly shame the organizations that didn't step up, and so eventually they all essentially have. But I think what I like about that is it really sets a bar. It really draws a line in the sand, and I mean, as well as positioning the UK as leaders in this, right from the very senior levels. But it gives all of us a benchmark that we can use to develop and really move the needle forward.
Thank you. What are your other experiences in other countries regarding the involvement of women in the workplace?
And go ahead.
I don't have as much experience as Kristy within this space, but I worked in Australia for a year. I took the work visa that you can take. If you're under 30 as a Canadian, you can go work in Australia, get this work visa. Once you enter, you have a year, but you can't hold a job longer than 3 months, so you don't take a job away from any resident. So it was a great experience. I did it just before school, or in between high school and university. And I think the difference is Australia is or at the time, was much farther back in the business world than it was in Canada. And I can't state if it is now because that was many years ago. But I do remember that I was working somewhere and I was called Sheila, because that's just kind of what they called women, that if they didn't know your name. And I was so taken back, like I was in 1950, like what just happened to me? My name is not Sheila. And I may have poured a pitcher of beer on someone, but I just was so taken back that was an allowed comment, that I think it may have sparked what's in me now, because I purposely, forcibly will push the envelope. Like if I go to work with an organization now, and I check them on LinkedIn, I check out their company, okay, great. Why is no females working on your senior level team? And they're like, oh, well, our assistant is. I go, no. I'm not interested. Tell me when you have like someone within your team, and I think then, there should be some alignment. So it's got to also come from, who do you want to do business with? And not publicly shaming anyone, but I think having an honest discussion, if you're friends with someone and you're trying to work with their organization, saying, you're missing out. I think you'll have more insights, or if you can't do it right now at this level, where's your board? Why is there no females on that board? Hey, I'll jump on your board. You guys need to truly grasp how this is going to affect who you are and how you're defined in a market that's altering. Because if the UK is taking this initiative and it's being picked up by 200 different financial organizations, and Canada's lagging behind in different aspects as well, if we can pick up on this aspect, we can at least run alongside the UK and compete against other countries. And then we have the ability, we have people who are willing to try and mentor and drive the discussion. It should really be something Canada looks at.
Global. I agree with Michele. My observations in the Australian market is that they're a generation behind us, certainly in financial services, certainly at senior levels in banks and other organizations. So, the good news for me in women payments is that we're there at the right place, the right time to offer women. What we do with our award programs and mentorship in our symposia is we give women a platform. So, unlike most other conferences and events in this industry, we put together a full day program of 30 to 35 speakers, and 98% of them are women. And what I've been told is that speaking to an all-female audience is different. For someone who is possibly one of their first time speaking, it's perhaps more comfortable, and it just gives them some experience to gain confidence, to help build their industry profile. Because way back when I was at a bank, I thought if I work really hard in my little corner, someone is going to notice me and someone will promote me because I'm working really hard and doing a good job. But it took me a long time to realize that no one sees you in that corner, because all the guys are out going, pick me, because they've got lots of confidence and they're happy to, as Michele says, to apply for jobs that they may only have partial qualifications for, but they say, well, I'll learn the rest on the job, no big deal. But women, and I know I did this myself, will, 9, 10 qualifications, I could tick 9 boxes, but I better wait till the next time it comes up because I can't tick all 10 boxes. And so that puts me another 2 years behind in the whole career advancement play. And the guys who can only tick 6 out of 10 boxes, they're going miles ahead of me. And I'm thinking, like, what's wrong with this picture? So, sorry, I know I'm getting off topic. The question was countries. So yeah, Australia is a generation behind. I do this. Just feel free to kind of get the cane. Australia is definitely.
I'm engaged in the conversation. I love everything you're saying. So. Okay,
sorry. So it makes us feel good when I say that. I agree with Michele that Australia is behind us. I find even the UK and Europe are struggling. As we are. Sadly. The good news, bad news is that North America is, I think, at the forefront, other than perhaps the Nordics, of getting gender parity at senior levels. We're not where we want to be, but we are ahead of other countries. I cringe when I look at India, where they don't even have sexual harassment laws in place, and a woman from a leading global financial services technology company that you might have worked for, went to India, and this is 3 or 4 years ago. She was just new in her job. She went to India. She sat down, met with some of her senior women leaders. They weren't very senior, like senior managers. They certainly weren't VPs or above. And she said, okay, what can I do to help you, advance in your careers? And the first thing that one of them said, well, our bosses are touching us in the office. So, she said, well, I can go home and write policies, but I'm not here to enforce them. And then the other experience she had was she had just, she's one of these top 40 under 40, she had just had her third child and was, pumping breast milk while she was on the road. And so when she got to the office in India, she asked one of the admins, who she knew had also just had a baby. She said, so where should I go to pump? And she kind of looked and said, go in this empty office. And she said, okay, well, fine, but where do you go? And she goes, the toilet. So, it's a sad story, but what it tells me is that we in Canada and the US have made good progress, and we're still not where we want to be from a gender parity perspective, but we have made good progress, and but we still have work to do.
So if we can kind of tilt this into a positive direction, because I think some of these painful stories, unfortunately, still occur. But if we can pivot ourselves to think about if we are at the forefront of opportunity for women, if we are, what is it we can all do as we leave this room to try and continue that positive trend and drive it home in a way that each of us can benefit, and frankly, the companies will benefit. And it strikes me that, Michele, you're onto something, that as you sit in an interview and you're thinking about where you might want to go work, remember, first of all, you're interviewing them. And second of all, one of your, those nasty 5 minutes at the end when they say, do you have anything you'd like to ask us? Well, this is an awesome question, right? How are women represented in your organization? What are their roles? How do they contribute? What programs do you have that recognize the unique contribution that women and, frankly, other underrepresented populations could be in your organization? So why don't we all, as one of our to-dos coming out of this, make it our own individual mission to help raise the thought process of the people that we interact with and think about how do we keep Canada in that forefront, if that's indeed where we are, and when we find bad behavior or where we encounter this, then we need to be able to share that information with each other so that we can all learn and also help build strategies together to deal with it. Because there's one thing Kristy's group has done more than anything for Canada, is it's created a cool factor to women hanging out with other women and talking about payments. Like, it's cool. And so how do we continue to build on that notion of community so that we can share bad stories and great stories? And how do we each of us think about what we could do to make sure that the people who aren't in those communities start to reflect on this and think about how we could be helping them?
And I think just to go off Sue's note, I really wanted to mention, like, Kristy gave me a platform, and I think confidence is the key. Confidence in every aspect. Confidence to ask for a raise, confidence to ask for the job that you may not be fully qualified for, to go to that interview, to get on stage and do your first panel or your first moderation. And Kristy's platform, Women in Payment, is so accessible. It's not expensive. It happens every 3 months. There's like a little tiny discussion happening on big topics, right, for not a lot of money. And I think having that community and having that ability to kind of interact with FinTech and talk to people from WeChat or from the bank at the senior level who happen to be at those events gives you the opportunity to elevate your career, which many other countries don't have. And I think people have to utilize that platform to educate themselves, apply for a Women in Payments Award. I had no grasp I would have an opportunity to win, especially while I was in a blockchain space. But I did win Women Under 40 Rising Star in September, and it gave me additional confidence to start advising companies. I didn't really realize I was at the point and stage in my career that I could advise other FinTech organizations, but that's what we have to do. Many of you in this room have the ability, and you're not constraint with your job to a certain degree to at least advise other companies. And maybe as women, we don't ask that, but I was bold enough to ask, and now I have that accessibility. And even to that extended point, I just asked for the ability to do some consulting work on the side, because men do that a lot too, but women do not. So they stay in their job, they work extremely hard to drive their career forward, but they're not like men opening their own consulting firms on the side and being able to leverage and drive their career forward on a whole other level, because they just didn't ask. And I think what Kristy's organization gave me is that ability to ask. And that makes me ask everyone in this room, A, to come to the events, but B, if you know someone in your organization, it could be a male who's supporting women, and you want to honor them. Like Jonathan from Berkeley won 2 years ago as a man supporting women. His team is 50-50, and he's driving forward because of it. And I think, putting yourself up for the award, putting someone who's inspired you up for the award. So proud to be on the committee. I don't know how I got here, but on the committee this year, and my goal is to have people apply. There's 6 different ways that you can be honored, and there's 6 different awards, and I ask all of you to find a way to get involved, because we have the ability to be at the forefront because we have this organization. And I think in the US it's harder because it's so much bigger. Like Canada, you can come together and meet the heads of Visa or MasterCard or the top banks by just coming to one event. And I think that has to just be more accessible for people to grow.
I paid her to say all that.
She did not.
She did not. Maybe a drink later.
So you can learn more about this amazing organization at womeninpayments.org. Womeninpayments.org. So we'd like to open some questions for the audience. I believe the microphones are on the sides.
Oh wait, she wanted to mention who the top. Who her
I'm
mentor
sorry.
is.
One last thing. Role models. So who are your role models?
You want me to start?
Yes. You have a list of like 6.
Well, I have a bunch of them. Some Canadian, some not. Oh gosh, where do I start? Okay, well, of course, everybody in this room, because you're here and you're showing leadership, and that's awesome. One of my personal heroes is Lisa Shields, just because she's my half-unicorn friend. Elaine Kunda, who just started a venture capital fund to support and invest in women-led startups. Awesome. Michele Scarborough, similar thing with BDC's FinTech Fund. Vicky Saunders, head of and founder of SheEO. 3 from outside Canada. Anne Cairns, one of my personal heroes. She's vice chair at MasterCard and has taken on the diversity file for MasterCard globally. She spends about 200 days a year traveling. It's just amazing what she does, but she has really taken her role as a senior woman leader to pave the way for other senior women to lead. She's taken that very, very seriously, and she's really got a whole program and diversity agenda for herself personally, but also within the MasterCard organization. So she's done a fabulous job. Gail Kelly was CEO of Westpac. Sorry, I think one more. Was CEO of Westpac, one of the Australian banks, for 7 years. She stepped down a couple years ago, but she changed the whole culture of that organization and brought in things like job sharing and maternity leave, extended maternity leave, things that really helped not only women, but all people, so that we could all feel inclusive and included in a culture that supported more than just a 9-to-5 job, some work-life balance, the ability to take your kid to the soccer game or your elderly parents to the doctor's appointment, whatever that is. It's not just always women. And last on my list is Christine Lagarde. She's awesome.
Thank you. That is awesome.
I'm just going to re-mention Lisa Shields, because I think when you look at that, what she's done with Hyperwallet and the ability to sell it to PayPal, right? That's massive. When you think of the scale of what she created and then who she sold it to, that's our female, from a Canadian perspective. She's the CEO, because I think when you look at that accessibility that she's driven for females within the CEO level of, yes, you can get funding and yeah, you might have to work harder for it, but there's starting to be VC funds out there just for women, like Roar from Peggy Vandekamp, and also the CEO like Vicky. If you're creating a platform to teach and share other females CEO level companies that they've built, and they're building companies that I want to convey how incredible some of these organizations of small businesses that are Canadian driven, that are female, that are trying to solve farming, that are trying to solve agritech and FinTech and all these different aspects. Just being exposed and reading their story can inspire you enough to do something about it. And it's just so much more accessible from just those two women alone.
So I have two people that I want to talk about. It's a very personal story. When you start life as a regulator, making the leap to the private sector is not so easy. And I had been a regulator, and then I became a lobbyist. And while I was a lobbyist, I had some really awesome clients in the payment space. And I didn't want to be a lobbyist anymore. It's an interesting business. and one of my clients was an amazing woman by the name of Joanne De Laurentiis. And she, at the time, was running Interac. And Interac was, at the time, so we're in the 90s, this is a club of male senior bankers. And Joanne managed to navigate Interac through an incredibly complex regulatory challenge and lead them. And there wasn't a single man in that group in the 90s who questioned why she was leading, because she just did it with so much style. And I was very fortunate at the time, because I was supporting her as a lobbyist, to have her look at me and see that actually my woman boss at the time was not a good boss, but that she saw enough raw material in me to help me make the transition from being regulator and lobbyist to becoming a private sector contributor working for her. So she, to me, in the 1990s, the role she played was absolutely extraordinary. She went on to lead Credit Union Central. She went on to lead Investment Funds Institute, and she's now a TTC commissioner, so she's no dust gathering on her. So she's someone from my past who saw Rough Diamond and helped me make a transition, and so I'm eternally grateful to her. And then another lady who's actually in this room inspired me about 4 years ago for her bravery at a time when you need to be really brave, and that's Wendy McKinnon, who launched a fantastic app, did all the right creative and fundraising things, made the circuit, and showed how to be brave as a woman in that world. And 4 years ago, that was really hard. And so my hat's off to you, Wendy. You inspired me. And I hope she inspires a whole lot of others. Not necessarily every first business try is going to work, but it's the bravery that I think is really awesome.
I will share with you my role model / mentor, and I know it's cheesy, but it's the CEO of FinTech Growth Syndicate, Sue Britton. She really saw something in me when I couldn't even see myself. So, Sue, you had similar experience in the 90s, and I'm internally forever grateful for Sue for just supporting me and everything. She's here right now supporting me, so yeah, couldn't ask for more. Thank you.
Awesome.
So I guess now we can ask open for questions. So gentlemen, right over there. You're okay. Sorry, I didn't see. The light is so bright.
It's too high. Hello? Okay. I'm working for Desjardins, Quebec, and our president is very committed to bring more women in management role. And you were asking earlier, or telling us, well, when you go back, ask yourself what you can do to help women grow. My question to you is in my organization right now, when I speak to young boys, I put quotation marks because they're younger than I am, but they're not that young. And what they say is, well, we like when our president says that he's committed to help women get to management roles, but we also feel threatened, and we don't know how we can grow in this organization now that they're favoring women. And my question to you is, how can I bring them on board on this cause? Because on this cause, because I think it's tremendously important that there's gender equality in the workplace.
Wow, it's really hard. I hear that. I think that, you know, bringing them to a women event and say, look, women's event will be successful when it's 50-50, when there's 50% males in the room and 50% females in the room, and we're all just trying to drive change. And I think if you go to the profit ratio perspective and you say, look, I grasp that, you know, you feel like you have less of an opportunity, but we need to change the gap, and then we need to surround everyone at the table who believe in this, because we realize it's going to drive us more revenue. And driving more revenue is really important, but also diversity is important. I think driving it back to the revenue play, and having, look, most organizations and what happened in the UK and quoting why they're doing this, it's not just about, hey, we need more females. We need this to be a diverse conversation so that the company can grow at a exponential speed to be more competitive than others. And if you come along with me and come to these events and put yourself at part of the discussion, you could end up being one of the men who are at the leadership level at a different perspective because you're involved. And I think just saying, well, it's too bad women just get their turn and they get to like have more opportunity now, it's all in how you approach and educate them on the issue.
Thank you.
Hello. I come from a country that was run by a woman. So it would be a surprise because it's also known as a chauvinistic place, Brazil. Felipe comes from Brazil as well. So Canada has an inclusion level that is only dreamed in Brazil. There is an acceptance and an equality and an understanding that society will only prosper if there is equal rights for men and women. But I think we have to also constantly remind ourselves that there are beautiful things that are different and are the way our species evolved, and I am very thankful to the fact that evolution made us different. And I want to bring a point that I think that makes women superior in FinTech today. And why should companies think about women? Because otherwise you're just thinking about equality, and we are basically the same brain and all the capacities. But there is a thing, FinTech is converging to ecosystems. And mind you, this is a suggestion for your group. It's not a question. I think the more we stress that the capacity that inherently women have of instead of just competing, which they're good at, but sometimes they feel that for survival, you have to connect with the most basic values. This is one of the things of motherhood. I think women are capable to create bridges. And we are in a society in which FinTech will need to create bridges. We will need to learn to work together, not only competing, but creating something more important than coalitions, which men are good. Women can do coalescence, which is another level and is deeper. And so I think if we men also recognize not only the equality, but the differences. And we praise the fact that women can help us learn that. Not only FinTech, but the whole society will be impacted. So it's a suggestion of a strategy. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Oh, I love that. And that goes to something that I've seen and observed, and that is women are typically very good collaborators. And I like this concept of coalescence. I think that's really important. So thank you for that. I would also suggest that because women are good at collaborating, they're also good at advocating on behalf of others. And I think that all goes together with the whole collaboration piece. So especially as we need to go into the next phase of FinTech, which is partnering. So it's not the FinTechs versus the banks anymore. It's the FinTechs, how can they partner and work together with the banks, and how can we, in payments modernization, how can we collaborate as an industry to get new standards and to, come together to put together a new payments platform, if you will, to better serve the market in Canada and beyond. There's going to take a lot of collaboration, which women are typically very good at.
Thank you for that. So
Sorry,
next question.
I know we're right at time, but I did want to ask a question about the conversation before about the next generation. I work in digital right now, and I have seen that at my level and new people coming into the bank, which is where I work right now, there is a growing population of women that are interested and want to grow in both digital and in technology. One of the things that I've noticed is just above me, getting to that senior manager, AVP, director jump is where we're losing a lot of women in that pipeline when they're leaving to start families or take the next step. So I wanted to ask, from your perspective, if you've seen some success stories or how you think organizations can bridge that pipeline gap so that we're not losing women at a critical point in their careers, and then we have this big disparity between starting out and at the top of the chain.
Yeah, honestly, I work daily with most of the banks in Canada, and I see it. There is a dotted line, and you do get to a certain age when you got to, if you're going to have kids, you got to do it. And so you see, first of all, I see a lot of people who are waiting a lot longer than 15 or 20 years ago to have kids, and that's for lots of socio reasons, right? But then I do absolutely see some financial institutions in particular are much better at this, and some individual managers are way better at this. And what I've tended to see is those managers are highly rewarded in the banks for being that inclusive and supportive manager who allows the employees to work from home more, or to take time off without even recording it because you got to get your kid to a doctor, etc. Or that you go away on mat leave and you come back and there's actually a genuine job waiting for you, not a over there in the corner until we figure out what to do with you job. I would say that some financial institutions are putting a lot more commitment on this. If you read the annual reports of the banks, one of them is a standout on their commitment to gender equality and to increasing the number of women in senior roles, because they've seen this dotted line gap. And I'll do a commercial for them because it's Bank of Montreal. They have done a really nice job recognizing that this will make them different and stronger. And so my hat's off to them. And when you go back to your institution, which I don't know what it is. Fortunately, I can't read that far because I'm getting on.
It's also green.
Okay. But it's a challenge, right? Because if one of our financial institutions has identified this as a potential differentiator, because we are in a world, we've all heard all week, we're in a world of incredible competition around securing and maintaining talent. Well, this is a really big, good thing to be doing, to help manage you through the career and the different transitions that women face than men ever have to face. I had twins, sent me back 14 months. When I came back, they changed my office into the broom closet and they put me in this dreadful role. But it didn't matter because I went back and I put my head down and I committed, and I could go home when my twins needed me for a while. But it's way harder, and that middle period is bumpy. There's friction that women face that men don't. And so my hat is off to employers who recognize that, and to managers, so look for them.
Thank you.
And be conscious of that, actually. If this is a phase you're entering into and you want to keep going upward, but you have a family, you got to pick your manager right. Be thoughtful about where you're going to land to position yourself well to get through the bumpy phase, because it is bumpy.
Thank you. So now this panel is officially over. Thank you so much for sharing your stories and your experiences, and thank you for making my first panel moderator so nice. Thank you.